Okay. Alrighty, with that out of the way. Hey, good afternoon, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing, Sparta?
Yeah, excellent. Just got up not too long ago, so I have intaken a sufficient amount of caffeine for this. And we're going to go
Okay.
ahead and discuss the long awaited mining update and all the different details around it. So, everyone, if you're just joining the community call for the first time, we do these bi weekly, every 2 weeks. And we go over whatever's been happening with the protocol, some of the things that we are looking forward to, and we field general questions from the community. The past few times, there have been some significant updates to the protocol, so we've spent most of the time that we have during the call going over those, and it is one such case today where there's been a significant and long awaited update that's going to change the way that some of the different stakeholders that are participating in the protocol go about contributing to it. So we're going to give you all the details on that. And of course, if there's anything that you don't understand or anything that you would like to touch upon again, you can go to the chat that is attached to the voice channel here, and you can just type out your questions. Sussy Buck, I'm sorry to hear you lost the wife and kids. That is really sad, but also something that you're just going to have to adapt to. I'm sorry, buddy. Or in some cases, that's a desirable outcome for some people. But in either way, hope you find a way to cope. So, alrighty, John. Let's start with the most basic way to tackle this, which is so there's been an update to the protocol. In someone has asked for plain English, so if we could please do like the explain like I'm five version. What exactly is going
Yep.
on with mining? Why was the network offline for a few days while Ying was working on this? And what is, in a nutshell, going to change going forward? We'll dive into the nitty gritty of it as we go on.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's good to give a bit of background. Mining, or benchmarking as we call it, but the mining had become very centralized. This is something which happens, it's not at all unusual in early stage proof of work protocols, especially when somebody finds a way maybe to sort of run the proof of work, which is, typically a hashing function, maybe on a different piece of hardware. It's kind of a natural progression, and then what typically happens is that sort of other people catch up. Um, Other people will develop maybe the ability to mine on sort of GPUs or FPGAs and so on. Um, I think that the issue in our case, a natural thing also happens when the mining becomes centralized is that the smaller miners sort of end up getting squeezed out, and they often sort of club together to join mining pools. And what we realized, which wasn't immediately obvious with TIG, um, is that mining pools in TIG, because of the nature of the proof of work, it's very different to most proof of work protocols. There was no obvious or easy way to create mining pools with the current way that it was set up. Um, so it's really something that all proof of work protocols have to have in the end, sort of mining pools. And these are usually sort of anarchically set up, like people can just set them up. And they usually do sort of spontaneously because the pool operator will take a small fee, often from the pool members. And so, there's an incentive to do it. In our case, you really couldn't do it. And the interesting reason is because there's no clear way in the innovation game for a miner who would be like a member of a mining pool to prove to the pool operator that they're trying to find solutions. So this is a kind of like a natural thing you have to do because what the mining pool is doing is, all the pool members are trying to find a solution. Obviously, it's very hard for them individually because they're almost by definition they can be very small miners. When somebody in the pool finds a solution, they cash it in and they share the rewards between all the pool members. Of course, if one of those pool members was just saying, oh, I'm mining away, I'm trying to find a solution like everybody else, and every time somebody else found a solution, they got a cut of it, but they weren't actually mining, they weren't even trying or expending any energy. That would obviously sort of be unfair and make the mining pool unviable. So in our case, it's like you can prove that when you found a solution, it's sort of obvious that you have been mining because you wouldn't be able to find a solution. But when you haven't found a solution, the current way that the innovation game works, by default, is that people are trying to find solutions using just sort of native binary code, and when they find one, they run it through WASM and they submit that. But the problem is the native binary can't be used because it's non-deterministic to sort of prove. There's no easy way to check that sort of binary or that sort of intermediate step or the kind of the calculations that didn't find a solution were in fact being run because they don't create a sort of deterministic fingerprint. And so one way to overcome, and the thing is about mining pools as well, as we said in the statement, is you think that they're kind of optional extras. A lot of people do think that, but they are in fact really important. And the paper that's linked showed that you can have up to 10 times more compute profitably taking part in a protocol, proof of work protocol, if there are mining pools than if there are no mining pools. And 10 times is huge. To add to that, the innovation game has certain features which we strongly suspect make mining pools even more important. So one of these is the imbalance penalty. So if you're a smaller miner, you'll tend to have proportionally a higher imbalance because you might get sort of 3 solutions for one proof of work, 1 solution for another one, and you think of it that you're getting sort of 3 times more compute in some sense, like 3 times more solutions from one challenge than another. I mean, if you're a large miner and you've got sort of 30 solutions for one and 10 for the other, then you just sort of rebalance your compute and sort of try and reduce your imbalance penalty. But if you're a smaller miner, you can't really do that. So it's like these fluctuations affect you more through your imbalance penalty. In the innovation game. And there's also another fact that somebody has raised, like what happens when the number of challenges grows even larger. Like we're aiming to have 10 challenges on board by the end of this year, and next year we could have we could be up to the sort of 50 or 100 possibly. And being sort of skillfully mining in an optimal way all of these challenges separately, it raises the barrier to entry. You have to be quite a very sophisticated miner. Another thing that mining pools would enable is that somebody could decide just to sort of focus or specialize on 1 challenge or 2 challenges. So again, there's just several reasons why mining pools are important enough, as I just mentioned, and there are reasons why they're even more important in the innovation game than they are in a sort of regular proof of work protocol. Really sort of indispensable. That's the main reason behind the upgrade.
Sorry about the background noise there. Yeah, John, it does sound like it's an important step forward when it comes to the maturation of the protocol. I mean, if it is really going to enable that much more compute to be on the network profitably, I see that as being very good for decentralization and the security of the network as a whole. Now, one thing that I was curious about is as I was getting my bearings this morning and catching up on the chat, there was some discussion around what's happening to solo miners, and it was unclear to me precisely what was happening at all. I couldn't really establish any clarity on that matter. A lot of people in the chat, I suspect, have been solo miners in the past. A lot of them have been pushed out, so I'm kind of wondering what the future of that flavor of participant looks like, and how life is going to be for them post-update.
It's important to emphasize, just because we're enabling mining pools, it doesn't mean to say you have to be in a pool. It's just an option for people to join one. It wasn't an option before, and we're adding that option. If you want to keep mining outside as a pool, out of a pool, as a so-called solo miner, there's no reason why you can't do that. So I'm not sure about the. Some people have been saying that solo mining has been sort of forbidden or disabled or something. I'm not really quite sure what they mean by that, but they're welcome to sort of elaborate if they. Perhaps I'm misinterpreting what their claim is, but yeah, certainly there's no obligation to join a mining pool. It's just an option.
Is it just because with more power coming online and more, you would suppose it goes this way, power being ceded to mining pools and those conglomerates of miners, does it just become harder for solo miners to participate? and that's why they're implying that it might be their demise or something like that.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is meant. So if there's more compute on the network, it does mean that if you're a miner of any size, you'll be relatively smaller as more compute comes in. So if you're relatively smaller, there is more motivation to join a mining pool. So in that sense, so it's not forbidden, but it might mean, again, if more compute comes online as the innovation game gets sort of bigger and more successful, a miner of any size will tend to want to join a mining pool. It's interesting if you look at Bitcoin, there are no solo miners. All of the thing, well, maybe there's like one crazy guy or something in a shack, but all of the big miners are like Bitmain and so on. I believe is the biggest Bitcoin miner in the world. They're all parts of members of pools. In fact, they run their own pools, or at least they're strongly suspected to be. So the biggest pools tend to be run by the biggest miners, but they don't just mine in their own pool; they mine in the other pools too, because it makes more sense to spread because it reduces the volatility of returns. So again, this is sort of the direction in which proof of work goes. But it's not sort of forbidden. It just becomes increasingly economically preferable as the network grows to join a pool.
Yeah, understood. Sasi Baka raises a question that I'm surprised no one's asked this before. We'll get to that later on in the call when we get all the other mining-related questions out of the way. But yeah, really well spotted and something that we'll be happy to talk about. John, another thing that was posted a few times, and I'm just raising the questions that are being asked by the community, as well as the ones that I'm personally curious about. Not this, this discussion hasn't been planned in advance or anything. This isn't like a PR thing that we're doing. This is a community call for the benefit of the community. So I'll be asking what I think you guys are wondering about. And if I ask a question, it's only because I think other people are interested in the answer as well. Anyway, some people have pointed out that the mainnet has been offline for a while. A few days now, I think. I was wondering why that was a necessary component of the upgrade and what the rationale around it was.
It's a good question. So I think that's more one for Ying. My perspective, I don't want to kind of throw Ying under the bus, but so actually when we halted the sort of protocol for the upgrades, we were always wanted to do it at the end of a round. So it's a question of the end of which round. Should it be the end of this kind of round that was just ending? This is what we were discussing last week. Should it be the end of the next round? So I was in Singapore at the time, and we had a call. I mean, the time differences are pretty pretty extreme, but I think the conversation went a bit like, okay, like we can do it in a few days. Well, this is what Ying told me. So let's kind of halt it now. Just I'll get it done over a few days. Otherwise, we have to wait an entire extra week. It turned out, correct me if I'm wrong, Sparta, that it has been an entire week, I think, since it's been halted. So on reflection, it would have been better to halt it the next week because then we would have minimized the downtime. Mm-hmm. All I can say, again, I'll have to confer with Ying in this. I think that he was thought that the upgrade would be ready to deploy sooner than it actually was, and so with the benefit of hindsight, it probably would have made sense to halt it the next round rather than the previous round. But to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. Good question.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we know. Yeah, I mean, and this is something that has been mentioned a number of times in the past, but worth rehashing. The innovation game is an extraordinarily experimental protocol that, despite being proof of work and bearing that name, is wildly different from every proof of work that I can think of that's preceded it. So there are going to be, I suppose, some learnings early on around best practices. And of course, I expect the team will learn from them and make the appropriate changes to their protocols going forward, whether that's related to updates or other things. One point that was raised in Vertigo's announcement, as I was reading it earlier, is that, as the protocol has progressed, a number of different fairly sophisticated miners have gone about, I would just broadly describe it as improving their methodologies to give them certain advantages. Typically, this is done by creating a version of an existing algorithm that is more tailored to the use of specific hardware, and then developing an advantage based off of that innovation that has been submitted whenever the next round rolls around and that algorithm goes live. So, with the mining pool update going live, there are going to be some changes around those practices. At least that's what's being suggested here. So, as Vertigo was saying, this led to a internal debate about what innovation materially consists of and what precisely wants to be encouraged, whether that's on the innovation side or on the benchmarking side. I was wondering if you could give any insight into what that conversation was like and what conclusions were drawn as a consequence of it.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So one of the basically side effects of us tweaking the protocol so that everything has to go through WASM, which, as I said before, enables mining pools, is that I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I think it's certainly more difficult or less obvious how you would mine some of these challenges using a GPU. So that essentially not being able to mine or making it more difficult to mine with GPU is a downside. So we want people to mine using, whichever is the most sort of advanced hardware, and whichever is the sort of hardware that would be most likely to be used to solve, versions of these challenges in the real world. And in many cases, that is GPU. So it's basically there was a benefit and a cost. And we had to weigh, this is why it wasn't an easy decision. Though you had to weigh up the cost and the benefit. Some people have been sort of developing GPU implementations. I believe that at the very least, Allfather had deployed one for several challenges. And this is positive innovation in so much as you get an algorithm and you sort of alter the implementation so that it runs well on a GPU is useful. So this is why, it just wasn't an easy decision because, and also we very much hope and we expect that it is temporary. The difficulty is that there's no obvious way to run mining pools without putting things through WASM at the moment. In fact, it's not WASM that you really need, it's deterministic compute more specifically. So you just need the calculations that are run to be the same on everybody's computer. Maybe we'll find a way to implement mining pools so that the calculations don't have to be the same on everyone's computer. Or there's functionality within WASM to use GPUs. There's something called Web GPU, where it can outsource certain stages of the computation to a GPU. There are also some kinds of challenges that we happen to know they have a structure whereby in order for them to have this sort of fingerprint, which we require for mining pools to be enabled, it doesn't require deterministic compute. So there are many sort of like variations on this theme, and the sort of preventing GPUs. Number one, it wasn't desirable from a point of view of if we want to get the very closest type of innovation, and implementations to what could be useful in the real world, and that it would be nice to allow GPUs for that. And also, it has some other fringe benefits such as you're less susceptible to things like botnets, because people can use stolen compute for CPU-friendly stuff, and it's significantly more challenging to do it for GPU-friendly stuff. These are there were strong arguments in both directions, but after sort of much debate, we concluded it was sort of better to make this change so that things have to go through WASM, and then open it up sort of gradually. So we'll take one challenge and we'll relax the requirement that it has to go through WASM, and then people can use GPU implementation and optimized implementations. We still, if everything's still working, if the mining pools are still working, and so on. And after a period of time, we say, okay, maybe we'll do it with another challenge. So it's the sort of gradual opening up and sort of allowing, sort of more kind of general types of, basically doing it in a way which is friendly to more types of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly, there's a lot of kind of rumors or speculation going around saying that we did it so that people would not be able to use GPUs. This absolutely isn't true. In fact, we're going to another thing I should just sort of trail. I don't think we've mentioned this yet. So we will probably introduce some hashing proofs of work. So these are the more traditional ones, maybe a sort of another, maybe sort of four of them. And then when we get new challenges, we'll swap out one of the hash ones for one of these more sophisticated scientific challenges. And these hash-based proofs of work will be GPU friendly, specifically designed that because one reason is because it has a very positive effect on discouraging botnets. So there are many reasons to permit GPUs, including that sort of security measure, but the mining pool issue in the end outweighed those.
Understandable, and this is probably a good time to ask. I know we've hinted at it various times now, but if you could just spell it out explicitly for the benefit of everyone in the call. Is GPU solo mining dead? Is there any reason to believe that it's dead?
No, it will be. It will be. I expect that you won't be able to mine the challenges, the current challenges. So there's vehicle routing, sort of the kind of vector similarity search and the SAT and the knapsack. When we turn it to apply this upgrade, I think that it will be difficult to mine it on a GPU. Somebody said to me that they found a way to run the WASM through a GPU. So I can't say it's not possible. And if they can do that, that's absolutely fine and to be encouraged, as I said, because use of more advanced hardware is good. My understanding of it, though, is that it's quite difficult to run WASM through a GPU, so most people won't find that an easy thing to do, or it might just be unviable. But somebody told me that they can do it, and they're working on doing it. Also, as I said before, we're going to add these hash-based proofs of work, which are specifically chosen to be GPU friendly. But they'll be able to use GPUs by definition on those. But that will be a subset of challenges, of course, not including these the four that are in place at the moment. So GPUs will certainly be able to be used at the very minimum on this hash-based challenge, and maybe on the other challenges too. And also, it's not solo mining. So people say, "Oh, will it be banned in solo?" I mean, there's no difference between mining pool and solo mining. It doesn't mean to say you can use certain types of hardware or if you're a solo miner and different types when you're a member of the mining pool. It's exactly the same, and it has to be. Otherwise, a solo miner could get an advantage on a mining pool, or vice versa. You can't have different pools and individual miners.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. Baki, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to chime in with anything else you'd like to ask. So, now that the upgrade has been pushed to mainnet and is live, something that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering is how long it's going to take for them to be able to participate in the mining pool. Do you have any visibility on conversations where that kind of information has been disclosed? Is it kind of up in the air? Or can we provide like a ballpark of when people who have been pushed out or not pushed out, maybe they just want to be part of a mining pool outright, will be able to participate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you'll be able to participate as soon as someone's coded up a mining pool. We will start working probably on coding up our own version, which will be sort of open sourced. Anyone can use it. Sort of mining pool software, after obviously this deployment has gone out, because at the moment we're just trying to do, finish and test the upgrade. But other people would be able to code up their own version of mining pool software if they wanted to. So this is the thing. The upgrade simply enables mining pools to be deployed in a relatively traditional way. And again, traditionally, the mining pools are not deployed by you don't get the sort of Bitcoin core developers like coding up mining pool software. People just do it spontaneously because, as I said, it's sort of profitable thing. They try and run a pool and they, and charge a fee to the pool members. But that said, I do believe that it is in our roadmap to write some mining pool software ourselves and then sort of make it open source it for other people, so maybe they could sort of modify it or just build on top of that, make it a bit easier.
Yeah, excellent. And that's almost...
But I don't know how long it's going to take. It's hard to know. Ask Ying, I think. He's better at estimating software, development time.
Cool. Yeah, I figured I would ask anyway. Let me just make sure there's no other new questions. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that's like about 30 minutes of mining pool update dedicated discussion. So I'm sure I'll think of more questions, and I will ask them accordingly. But I wanted to call
Yeah,
attention.
there's another point actually, Spider,
Okay,
that I
go
should
ahead.
make. That this was something I think which was mentioned in Vertigo's announcement. So there's another thing which we sort of realised, the way that, I was going into too much detail, but the way that we thought, okay, if everything gets run through WASM, then we can do mining pools, in a traditional way, and the way that we get out that this could be done was that um, get the sort of benchmarkers to sort of commit to all of the instances that they're going to run, pretty much over the next block. And then they sort of basically they have to submit the either the solution which came from the instances, or at least some kind of intermediate step to prove that they at least tried. They ran the instance and it didn't result in a solution, but they did at least try. And one of the sort of side effects that this has, um, sort of got kind of beneficial side effects, is that means that you're, once you've sort of committed to the doing a certain number of trying a certain number of instances at a certain numbers of difficulties, you can't then just say, oh no, I'm not interested, like that instance like came out as being like one that looks a bit hard, so I'm not going to bother even attempting that one. You can't really pick and choose. This had a sort of positive effect because something else that we were peripherally aware of and we sort of suspected was happening at one stage is that people had developed a way to screen instances, in a systematic way, and just look for the ones that sort of looked easier by some heuristic, and then only attempt them. And this is quite an interesting case because this is a clever thing for somebody to be able to do, and it is sort of innovation in the sense, they'd innovated a better way to mine, or be a more efficient benchmarker. Um, the thing is, it's like it's not useful innovation from the point of view of the wider world. I'll just give you a very quick example to illustrate this. So, say for example, the vehicle routing problem, which is a bit like the traveling salesman problem. You've got to sort of move between different cities, as they call them, and kind of dropping off different amounts of cargo, and you have to try and find the sort of shortest route between the cities. Just imagine if you get a sort of instance of that vehicle routing problem, and you've got some cities distributed on a grid. You might say, oh, these cities they look kind of spread out, in this randomly generated instance. So why don't I just roll again and try and get an easier looking one, right? Because if I want to find a minimum length between a load of cities, if they're all spread out, like I'm going to have a less of a chance of finding this short distance. You could sort of churn through millions of possibilities, and then you could get a possibility where, say for example, all the cities just happen to be sort of clustered around the middle, or maybe they were sort of clustered in two groups or something. And the thing is about that is it does mean that you can then only attempt instances which look easier, which means going to mean that your success rate goes up. In that case, you can see very, very easily it's not useful to somebody wanting to solve the vehicle routing problem in the real world. Really, if you want to solve the vehicle routing problem, like you're given a problem and then you want to sort of figure out, kind of, what's the minimum distance between these cities. You can't just say, give me another problem, don't like that one, it looks a bit too hard. So it's sort of, on the one hand, it is clever, but also, I mean, we need to kind of very clear about the mantra and the purpose of the innovation game.
Mm-hmm.
It is to incentivize sort of miners and innovators to come up with useful innovations, one that we can capture the IP, which is embodied in it, and make it available to license in the wider world. That is the value capture. That is the demand for the token. So that's the entire point of the innovation game. So lots of people say, oh, it's innovation, but you said you didn't like it. A sports short, this was supposed to be the innovation game. Actually, it's the useful innovation game. It's just that if we called it the useful innovation, it would have been a bit of a mouthful. But you can see if you want to read the right paper, you're not just trying to get people to innovate, I don't know, a better way to sort of, I don't know, spin a matchstick on its end, or kind of do keepy uppies with a football or something, or there's an infinite number of things that you can innovate a way to do better. None of those things have, significant value. None of those things we could sort of license to big tech firms, so on and so forth. So just to be very clear, it is interesting. What it's doing basically is it's sort of exposing ways, sort of, maybe kind of design shortcomings in the innovation game, but therefore the innovation game is being altered and made stronger and better. So we're sort of honing it into something which sort of maximally incentivizes the correct type of innovation from our point of view, which is useful, licensable innovation. So again, one of the things that this upgrade is doing is it's really sort of making that strategy of just sifting through lots of different possible problems and only picking ones which you think look unusually easy. It's making that strategy sort of unviable or a lot less viable than it was. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, this is yeah, it's just very important to always bear in mind what the point of the innovation game is, and we will sort of continue to try and make the innovation game kind of directed towards that objective. Um,
Yeah, I mean, this makes a lot of sense, and I think it's good for the protocol. I mean, I think it would be very difficult to dispute that, but I have shown TIG to quite a few people who I am acquainted with who are very intelligent, but also very critical of crypto, because certainly the projects that interest me the most are those that I think are going to, one, use blockchain, and two, be genuinely useful and novel. And one friend who had not read the white paper, he had just looked over the presentation that you did at Cambridge. I don't want to butcher this, but he compared it to playing chess against a mechanical Turk and then getting paid by the Turk for participating. And the criticism that he's actually making is, well, there's no proof that any of the algorithmic improvements or data or IP for that matter that comes out of the innovation game is actually going to be useful. So I totally understand. You actually have the same concern as him, right? We want to encourage useful kinds of innovation as opposed to quote unquote innovation for the sake of it, that is used for the purposes of like enhancing reward extraction or establishing any kind of advantage that doesn't really benefit the protocol or related IPs. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you have anything to add to that,
Absolutely.
but
So
yeah, go
I think
ahead.
your friend makes a very good point. Like what we're doing is difficult, and people would be skeptical that it might even be possible, right? And one thing that we're definitely not going to do is succeed if we don't alter the protocol when we see a certain not a clearly non-useful. You might be very clever, but completely useless type of innovation being deployed at scale. And sometimes maybe we wouldn't be able to sort of deal with that, but in this case there's a very very clear way to deal with that. You basically just say you're not allowed to know what your instance is before you've committed to mining it, and that immediately dealt with this problem of so-called instance grinding, just sort of sifting through billions of instances trying to find um, unusually easy ones. So that was a sort of easy win for us. um, and but yet it seems in certain quarters to be very controversial. But I think that the people who I think it's controversial are judging the innovation game by the standards of other protocols, right? The protocols just do vast amounts of stuff which doesn't incentivize any useful innovation. Maybe incentivizes people to secure the network, which is kind of useful, but then you always have the problem of what is the network for, right? And I think
Hmm.
many people are buying their coffee with Casper tokens or anything like that at the moment. I don't want to sort of single out Casper. I think all the protocols have a sort of similar challenge in finding. I mean, not many people wake up in the morning and say, sometimes I wake up and say, oh, geez, I'm really glad ChatGPT is invented. It was only invented like 2 years ago because I drafted this email, right? And it seems a bit awkwardly phrased, and then you put it in there and it kind of smooths it out, right? And it improves your wording or maybe your grammar. But I don't think I've ever woken up in the morning and say, gee whiz, like, I'm so glad Ethereum exists. Like, my life is so much easier. Because the only people who wake up in the morning happy Ethereum exists are people who are going to go on there and trade meme coins, right? The thing
Hmm.
is, it's like Ethereum only solved problems that it itself created. It's like, oh, it's really unscalable and slow, or now we've got a new, amazing scalability solution and stuff. It's like, well, scalability wasn't a problem until people were trying to change. You see what I mean? So it's like there
Yeah.
is a big challenge, and we are being extremely ambitious. I would say, hold this in your mind. And we are, maybe we won't succeed, right? But we definitely won't succeed if we don't alter the protocol when we see easy ways to incentivize more useful innovation, or at very least disincentivize what is clearly useless innovation.
Well, there are a lot of things I could say here, but I won't. For your sake, John, I hope that there are no Ethereum maxis in the chat, because if there are, you're going to hear it from them.
Ethereum is a fantastic like experiment, right? And if they ever find a use for it, I think it's going to be absolutely mind blowing. Um, it's fantastic the kind of community that they have, and that it's very smart people, kind of beavering away. But fundamentally, yeah, I don't think if Ethereum disappeared from the world tomorrow, what would happen? Like, would anybody kind of lose? Yeah, I suppose some people would lose their jobs. I don't know. Yeah, that's bad. Anyway, I won't go into it too much. Let me be digging a hole for myself here.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. But
I
we,
love the
we,
Ethereum
we
guys,
will
by
to
the way. They're
save.
all really nice.
Yeah, every F maxi I've met has been cool. Much better than some other flavors of maxis that I've run into, certainly.
Yes.
So this is, we've been talking about mining for the past 40 minutes. I'm sure there will be some more questions before we get off the call today. Certainly, if anyone else has more questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat. I'll be sure to bring them up. And speaking of questions from the chat, we have one from Sasi Baka. Something that we've not gone over in the past. I mean, people can go and read what the team's roles are on the website. But he is correctly pointing out that within the context of the Discord, we only really hear from John and Ying regularly. And if you have a good eye, and you've examined the roster of people that join during the calls, you've noticed that Lee and Phil, who are part of the team, tend to be here. So I was wondering if you could provide for people who haven't looked into it or done the research, John, if you could spell out for them what the other members of the team are busy doing. I mean, we have a good idea of what you and John are doing, or excuse me, what you and Ying are doing on a daily basis. But how about Phil and Gabby and everyone else?
Question. So Gabby's our business development guy. So he's sort of he kind of organizes our sort of this fabulously kind of large database full of contacts that we have, and sort of tries to keep those guys up to speed in what's happening, and he organizes sort of that meetings for us, and kind of finds sort of does sort of at least preliminary sort of back and forth with people who are interested in speaking to us or finding more about the innovation game. So yeah, kind of all sorts of business development stuff. Lee Hughes is our sort of really our commercial guy, COO. So he really does a sort of management of the sort of people, staff. He does financing. He deals with the sort of the kind of bank accounts, and there's a sort of accountants, and we have to get what is it like records or accounts filed for the company, and so on and so forth. He's he's an ex sort of hedge fund guy, stock trader. So he's he kind of speaks to people on who are interested in trading, potential listings on exchanges and so on and so forth, that sort of thing. And Philip David is our IP and general kind of lawyer supremo. And there's a lot of sort of legal stuff you have to deal with regulations in a crypto company, especially if you're based in Europe, and also sort of intellectual property is a big part of the innovation game, which we haven't talked so much about yet on community calls, because it's a sort of lagging thing. Like first we get people's contributions in from innovators, then the sort of the IP licensing model and the protection of the IP really starts to kick in yet, and we're still at a very early stage of that, but it's all in sort of it's being kind of planned out and architected, and Phil wrote our licenses and so on. So that's really his role.
We have talked about this in the past. The IP will, at least in the future, be a critical part of how TIG succeeds commercially, and how value flows into the protocol. So that's definitely something that we'll probably have a dedicated call on in the future. But yeah, not something that we've talked about that much so far. It's something that a lot of people are probably not going to be familiar with. At least I wasn't familiar with it before meeting and talking to Phil. So definitely worth at a future day
it's
going
a very
over that.
specialized world, and something that's been slightly alien to crypto. There's not very much of IP stuff. I mean, people are often keen to advertise that their code, at least some of it in crypto, is open source. So that's like an IP thing, which is protected by copyright, which is what enforces the licenses in open source. But beyond that, it hasn't really been much of a part of crypto, which is I think is about to change. And you would have thought it's pretty natural. Like all of the biggest companies in the world, at least currently, are kind of heavily involved in intellectual property because when you have something of value and you want to sort of capture some of that value so that you can reinvest the money on more research, then intellectual property is a necessary part of that um, process.
And I'm sure a lot of people, for those wondering, this is an integral part of TIG token going up, I guess. So something that, to spell it out more in more professional terms, the way that value ends up flowing into the protocol will be a consequence of the way that IP is handled once algorithmic innovation reaches a certain point. So we'll just spell that out explicitly for those who were not already aware of it. That is one of the long-term goals of TIG. We're at the 43-minute mark here. I'm going to put out another call for any additional questions that people might have around the mining pool update, but really anything that they'd like to see talked about. Sasibaka raises an important question and one that was not part of what we were talking about previously. So all questions welcome. Just post them in the chat, and I'll go ahead and ask them. John, I think we've touched upon most of the core components of the announcement. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch upon before we all head off?
I don't think so. I would say that, and I think bear in mind with this this particular upgrade, this is really the biggest one that we've ever done, and that's, as I said before, maybe Ying's slight over optimism about when it would be finished soon after we ended the last round. Is all the more. I mean, the uncertainty, the error bar is all the larger because it's such a big and important upgrade. So I think it's sort of understandable if people kind of misestimate with regards to sort of how. Obviously, it's much more important to get it right than to rush it. And he has been working incredibly hard. There's no question about that. Which we have been supporting him as much as we can, but it's mostly on him still. I think it's definitely going to be a new dimension to the innovation game, and it'll be great to hear what you guys think about it. To what extent it's an improvement, but I think that mining pools will be they're going to make things a lot more rich and interesting, if nothing else, and allow a lot more people potentially, or a lot more compute, really, not necessarily different people, but just a lot more compute in terms of terawatts and CPUs to participate. And that, of course, is fundamental part of the innovation game. Provides the security and the surety that the correct innovators are being rewarded. So it's a big step forward.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for those closing thoughts, John. You might have been wondering, whoever's sitting on the call, where's the lottery? Why haven't we done the lottery? That's because I've just now gotten a list of names. Someone was kind enough to go ahead and type them out for me. You will have heard me, if you've ever listened to the call recordings and heard a sound that's sounds like a camera shutter, that's just me screenshotting the list of names as well as the results of the wheel spin. Now, I'm going to go ahead and set that up really quick because I do have to kick out some names, some people who have already won way too many times, some people who are part of the team. So let me just clean this up really quick, and I will go ahead and run the lottery. Okay, the doctor, he cannot participate. Sorry, John.
Okay.
Sparta also out. Don't like that guy. There we go. All right. So, the first winner is... All right, congratulations, Sparks60. You are the first winner for this week's lottery. All right, let's do one more. Okay, yes. Yes, congratulations. You are this week's second winner. Okay, excellent. Cool, we're at 44 minutes now. Wow, I can't believe we're going to end a community call under 50 minutes. This is actually really impressive. This has never happened before. Usually we go to at least 55.
Yeah, we're getting better. We're getting more concise.
More efficient, just like benchmarkers and innovators around the world, hopefully. Alrighty, everyone. Yeah, well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's discussion. If you had some questions on your mind after that enormous update, I hope that they have been put to rest. As always, attendance has been remarkable, and it seems to be getting better and better every week. Thank you so much for being here, for taking time out of your Sunday to come chat with us about the innovation game. First huge update to the protocol today, at least since the Discord went live and we started building a community. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, John. But yeah, lovely to see all you guys here.
By far the biggest. You're right. It's by far the most profound change we've had so far. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and hopefully it's to the benefit of everyone involved and the protocol itself. I think it will be. Thank you so much, guys, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.